help from an unexpected source. Welcome to Bible on the Go with Dr. Dan. Ebed-Melech did something amazing, and I want to read it to you. It's just in a few verses from Jeremiah 38, 7 to verse 13. I'm reading from the Net Bible, and it says this: An Ethiopian, Ebed-Melech, a court official in the royal palace, heard that Jeremiah had been put in the cistern. Of course, the passage before tells us that his enemies and detractors had thrown him into the cistern to die, and Ebed-Melech heard about it. While the king was holding court at the Benjamin Gate, how specific, Ebed-Melech departed the palace and went to speak to the king. Isn't this cool? This is already cool, isn't it? It says, he said to him, "Your royal majesty, those men have been very wicked in all that they have done to the prophet Jeremiah. They have thrown him into a cistern, and he is sure to die of starvation there because there is no food left in the city." Why was there no food left in the city? Well, the Babylonians were about to surround it. The doom was coming. These were some of the darkest days in the history of Israel, but God was still in charge. Ebed-Melech continues. Ebed-Melech had just said this, and then verse 10 says, "Then the king gave Ebed-Melech the Ethiopian the following order: Take 30 men with you from here and go pull the prophet Jeremiah out of the cistern before he dies." So Ebed-Melech took the men with him and went into a room under the treasure room in the palace. He got some worn out clothes and old rags from there and let them down by ropes to Jeremiah in the cistern. This is really fascinating. He said, Ebed-Melech called down to Jeremiah. So this cistern must have been very deep, where the passage before this said that he had sunk in the mud even. And it says, verse 12 says, Ebed-Melech called down to Jeremiah, "Put these rags and worn out clothes under your armpits to pad the ropes." Wow. Jeremiah did as Ebed-Melech instructed. So they pulled Jeremiah up from the cistern with ropes. Jeremiah, however, still remained confined in the courtyard of the guardhouse. Now, here's the thing. Look at all the amazing things that are happening here in this passage. First, Ebed-Melech was a Cushite, an Ethiopian. He was a court official, but he was not Jewish. He didn't have a dog in this hunt. He didn't have to care, but apparently he built some kind of friendly relationship with Jeremiah, and he knew that Jeremiah was prophesying the truth. By contrast, all these other prophets were just telling the king what he wanted him to hear. He was observant about Jeremiah's mistreatment. He knew about it. He knew what people were saying about it, and he found his opportunity and went to the king because he had access to the king. And in verse 8, he took action. He goes to the king's palace and speaks to him. And we get to verse 10, you might have noticed that the king immediately said, "Get 30 men," because, of course, there were so many enemies of Jeremiah that a couple of guys wouldn't have done the trick. He had to have 30 men who could guard him while he threw down the rags and talked to Jeremiah and set down the rope. And the follow through, right? In verse 11, he paid attention to detail, getting these old clothes to protect Jeremiah as he was pulled out. Here's the amazing thing. We don't know anything else about Ebed-Melech, but we know he did a really good thing for God's prophet, that God had really used him to rescue Jeremiah from this dangerous circumstance. And if you read on in the next chapters, you discover that because of Ebed-Melech, Jeremiah was able to give the truthful instructions to the king for him to have the best type of outcome possible, even in the saddest, darkest days of Judah and Jerusalem. Jeremiah prophesied truth in the midst of chaos because of the service of Ebed-Melech. Thanks for watching Bible on the Go with Dr. Dan. If you like these videos, it's great when you subscribe. Hit that red button, like, comment, and share. By the way, I appreciate all of you who share the videos. It really helps, and I hope that all these videos are helpful to you. Praise God.